With the Vancouver Canucks development camp opening up, two players were invited that might be hidden gems for the Canucks organization. And Canucks prospect Josh Bloom speaks out on a recent draft pick, saying he was surprised that they got him so late in the draft. We'll talk about this later on this episode. Before we start, I just want to give a shout out to everyone that is subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to go down below as we're trying to reach 4,000. So make sure to go down and hit the subscribe button. We'll cover everything to do with the Canucks and you never want to miss another episode. But with that, let's go straight into the video today, which is the Canucks development camp. Now, I'm not going to read through all this. You can just kind of pause it. Obviously, the Canucks have a bunch of guys that they recently drafted, just prospects that haven't cracked the team within this organization that are at their development camp. And there's two guys that are notable standouts that are UFAs and the Canucks have in right now. We'll touch on the first guy, which is a forward in Davis Burnside. So Davis Burnside is a right wing, 20 years old, playing in Ohio State University. In 38 games played, 9 goals, 17 assists for 26 points. The biggest thing with Burnside, he's tied for second in points on his team in Ohio State, and he's tied for third in goals. Now, obviously, 26 points don't look like the flashiest numbers, but the biggest thing about Burnside is a guy that still can develop. He's 20 years old. He's still impactful. The college numbers aren't super high unless you're a top-end draft pick or a top-end prospect, but it still goes to show that a lot of these guys that aren't getting drafted have a lot of value. And just looking at Burnside off the bat, Griffin, what's your thoughts on a guy like this getting invited to the development camp?
I think it's great. I think it's nice to bring in this other talent that didn't go noticed in the draft or just aged out of minor hockey or didn't get their shot at the AHL. So it's nice to see someone at the collegiate level come into the development camp. We've seen how great their college players have been, specifically Quinn Hughes. In the numbers he was able to put up at the University of Michigan. He does come from that collegiate standard where they just breed great hockey players. So who knows? Burnside could be another one of those. He comes from a great hockey school like Ohio State. And yes, those numbers aren't too flashy, but again, they don't play too many games in college. So with the small amount of games that he was getting, he was making the most of it. And I think he's someone who can make a nice case for himself to land on this Canucks roster or in the AHL. I don't think it'll go right to the NHL right away. I think he'll work his way up through the AHL if he gets the opportunity. I think it'll be nice to have a guy like that where you've seen that he can be productive and he has a lot of potential to grow as well.
And see, the big thing is like obviously a guy like this being 6 foot, 176 pounds, going undrafted, he's a UFA, so the Canucks can sign him through this development camp, and it's a perfect time to look at him. But if you look at it, the draft guide on Burnside, it says enthusiastic, intelligent forechecker. Burnside launches himself at opponents on the offensive zone puck retrieval, making second and third efforts to try to pry pucks loose from defensemen. The winger tracks well, backchecks dignitely, and supports his defenders during his in-zone pressure. So the biggest thing with this is a guy that would fit perfectly under a Tocchet system. Just a hard forechecker, a guy that's going to do everything he can to retrieve the puck. This is a guy I would be surprised if the Canucks didn't keep around to bring into rookie camp, sign him to a 1-year, 2-way contract, just to get more looks at Burnside. Obviously, if you want to keep watching Burnside, you can look anywhere on Twitter or anywhere that's streaming the development games and you can get more on these guys. But it doesn't stop there, as we have a second player in Bret Mirwald. Now, Bret Mirwald is a goaltender currently playing with the Vancouver Giants in the WHL. So in the season 2023-2024, he had 55 games played with a .913 save percentage, which is respectable for a guy in the WHL, but we see him take it up a notch, going straight into the playoffs with the Vancouver Giants again, having a .924 save percentage in just 5 games. Mirwald was a one-time WHL top goaltender. He won the award for this, and he made the first All-Star team as well. This is just showing how many guys that are going undrafted that have so much potential. Mirwald is 6'1", 180 pounds. Like I said, he's a right-handed catching goaltender. And what's your thoughts on a guy like this coming in as well, Griffin?
I think it's nice to add more goaltender depth if they do decide to sign him. We've seen how Thatcher Demko, Vezina finalist, Archer Shilov's breakout goalie of the postseason, and Casey Smith was a solid backup. And of course, we have the history of the great goaltending with Roberto Luongo himself. So if you bring in a guy who did a great job with the WHL and the Vancouver Giants, he played well in the playoffs there. He won goalie of the year there. Bringing him into a 2-way contract where he can play in Abbotsford. We just saw their goalie walk as well. So who knows? Maybe this is their replacement in Abbotsford while Shilovs is the backup for Thatcher Demko. And he could be one of those guys who could step up to be that third string goaltender or emergency goaltender should they need him in the regular season or in the playoffs. We saw how Shilovs was that third option this year. So you never know. It's the playoffs and it's the regular season. Anything can happen. So you want to be prepared for every situation. And again, this is developmental camp. These guys aren't going to be ready off the bat. So if you sign them to these two-way contracts where they can do either or, I think that gives a lot of opportunity for great development with these guys.
And the hard thing is with the Canucks, how can you look at a goaltender that's made these jumps? Obviously, going from an 800 save percentage with the Moose Jaws straight into his first season with the Vancouver Giants with a 910, making the huge jump in almost double the games, having a 913 save percentage going into the playoffs and being dominant. It wouldn't be the first time the Canucks have picked up a guy from the development camp. I mean, we've seen it last season when Patrik Allvin signed Christian Felton on a one-year entry-level contract from a development camp. So it seems like the Canucks are looking at every possible option. They want to continue to compete, but with this team lacking top-end draft picks, especially in this past draft, they're going to have to look at some of these diamonds in the rough. And I truly think both these guys must be signed and could be hidden gems. But what's your guys' thoughts on both these guys? What's your thoughts on bringing on a guy like Burnside? What's your thoughts on looking at Mirwald as maybe the starting goaltender or backup goaltender in Abbotsford this next season? Let us know down in the comments, but straight into the second topic today, which is, sorry about that, Anthony Romai continues to impress. Now, we did get a quote from Josh Bloom, who is a Canucks prospect. I'm sure you've heard a lot about him. He actually just scored the game-winning goal to beat the London Knights in the OHL Finals. But he says on Anthony Romai, who was a North Bay teammate of his former teammate, heck of a player. I was surprised where we got him, and I couldn't be happier that he's a part of the organization. First-class human and fantastic hockey player. Now, if you watched our videos at all, you know that Anthony Romai was someone drafted in the 6th round by the Canucks this year, 162nd overall in this draft. He's 6 foot, 183 pounds, and this kid was electric in the OHL. 58 goals, 53 assists for 111 points. And Griffin, I know this is your boy. I know Jonathan Lekramaki's my boy, but you might be a bigger Romani fan than I am of Jonathan Lekramaki. What's your thoughts on this?
I love it. It's great to see praise from a prospect like Josh Bloom, who was the MVP of that Memorial Cup final game, scoring that game-winning goal. And he was another prospect that we were very happy to get in Vancouver. So to hear him praise a guy like Romani, who I've been very high on since our pre-draft video, where I said that this guy is the steal of the draft. He's going to be electric. You look at his production; he has a plus 43 rating from last season in North Bay, where he was the leading point scorer in the OHL. So this guy has a huge ceiling to where he could just go anywhere with it. And to see him get that high praise, I think it's great coming out of development camp, where we definitely could see him in a Canucks jersey potentially sooner than any of the guys on this list, and potentially before your boy Lekramaki. Who knows? That might be an interesting bet to make.
Yeah, that's the big thing. The Canucks do have a lot of prospects within the organization. I mean, you can just look at the development list. Obviously, you don't have the top-end talent here. You do still have Tom Willender, who is a great prospect playing in Boston right now. Well, sorry, Boston University. So the biggest thing is there's a lot of guys here, and there's not a lot of room to move on. So these guys are going to have to show that they can impress. Obviously, Josh Bloom's a guy that wants to make the AHL after having a disappointing season in the AHL, down to the ECHL, and then to play in the juniors. But these guys are going to show something. And just what's everyone's thoughts on this? What's your thoughts on Romani? Do you think he could be the steal of the draft? What's your thoughts on the two gems in Burnside and a guy like Mirwald? Do you think these guys could advance into the Canucks system and eventually make Abbotsford? Let us know down in the comments. But speaking of comments, let's get into everyone's favorite topic, which is comments of the day. The comment today comes from JF. Sorry, I can't pronounce that right now. I'm too tired to read it all. You guys do an awesome job. Keep up the good work. I've been watching for a while. Sub today. And if you want to be featured on the next episode, go down and leave a comment on everything we talked about. Could be featured on the next episode as comments of the day, like our friend did here today. And while you're down there, make sure to leave a like, subscribe. We're trying to reach 4,000. So if you want to join the Canucks Digest community, you can go down and hit the subscribe button. But I've been your host, Mark Pye, with my co-host, Griffin. Take care.